Good deal. Thank you. Thank you, Theory. I'm a recovered heroin addict. My name is Mike D. Sobriety date, March 9th, 1987. Just celebrated 38 years of being separated from heroin, but not my thinking. My thinking has got a lot better since I've been here, but there's still times when I need to go back to the source. So it's good to be here. Good to see a few people on here that I know. Ken, good to see you. I know you've been moving through some stuff. I don't get down Santa Monica way or West Los Angeles way too much. So I'm not fellowshipping really down there, but as a result of online deals that we have going now, we can stay close to someone, and it's good to see you up and about and still doing what you do. Those of you that don't know, Ken is one of our original pioneers to Cocaine Anonymous. And thank you so much for that, Ken, because Cocaine Anonymous opened a door to my life that I never thought was possible. Never thought. When I got here somewhere around 1980, I'd say 88 or 89, as a result of doing a piece of work with Joe Hawk, who was my grand sponsor, I found out that I was not alcoholic. And basically what he told me, not being alcoholic, I did not belong in AA. Because Alcoholics Anonymous is about singleness of purpose. It's for alcoholics. I've actually been kicked out of a couple of AA meetings. I've had to make amends to one in Las Vegas of about 150 to 200 people any given Friday evening. And I sashayed my ass up in there talking about I'm powerless over alcohol, and they accepted it for a while, but then one of your sure enough AA soldiers, we have soldiers around here, got up one night and say, all you people that come in here and don't want to identify as alcoholic, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. This is for alcoholics. And since then, I don't share in AA meetings. I might go to an AA meeting and they might ask me to say something. I let them know that I am addict before I talk, but very seldom. Joe passed on to me to keep my foundation solidified. Never hang out just to be hanging out. Meaning don't be something other than you are just to fit in. And in actuality, it saved my life. It saved my life because I found out what I did for heroin, I never did for alcohol. Sat on Rikers Island many a day for heroin, not for alcohol. So I shared that. I know nothing that happens in the moment is not supposed to be happening. I shared that because of directions that I've been given throughout my recovery and throughout my phases of taking a journey through the 12 steps, each step, 1 through 12, multiple times in my recovery, to say that I'm a recovered addict, recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. the unmanageability of my life, which can be found on page 18, alcoholic addict illness, page 52, 9 bedevilments, and page 151, the hideous four horsemen, describe the nature of what I suffer from, the root of what I suffer from, that unfortunately I get free and I get today and I get moments of clarity and I get daily reprieves, but it's only in the moment. There's a consistency that must happen with my life that keeps me centered and anchored in truly what we do in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous. And I don't know if you like me or not, and it doesn't really matter. If you are, welcome to the club in the club, but there's a club in the club here that's called the Seekers. We get thirsty. We get a drink of water and it quenches our thirst, and then we need another drink and we go back in for a deeper, more powerful, more revolutionary way in living our lives, basically just to be of help to God's people and this world. That's it. So I'm grateful for those that came before me. I will never not honor my elders, the elder statesmen, those that blazed the trail for us, those that sacrificed for us, that we might have a new way in living life, and ultimately to those that wrote the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is used in Cocaine Anonymous as our basic text. So those directions quite important for me. When I sponsor someone and we begin to do some work, my first deal with them is to let the work do them. Let each step work them, meaning have an experience with being powerless, with no drugs or alcohol in your system whatsoever, to see what you really suffer from. To come to a conclusion in step one that you're alcoholic or addict. And that simply means you suffer from a threefold disease: physical, mental, and spiritual. First half of the first step is what, to a degree, separates us, but I don't really like that word separation. There's too much separation in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous already. We get in our little spaces and our little parts of town and in our little meetings, and we think that's all it is to Cocaine Anonymous. Cocaine Anonymous is a worldwide institution. It's a worldwide movement that continues to flourish all around the world. I was just in London a couple weeks ago, and first time I went to London was to do a workshop at a convention. Actually, Ken was there, myself, and Danny Falcone, and who else? Brother Ben. A couple of us were there for that convention. And at that time, the UK had about 7, 8 meetings. That was it. And was talking to someone on this last trip, and there's like in the UK alone, 800 and some meetings in the UK alone. And Cocaine Anonymous is now spread throughout Europe, in Germany, in Sweden, in Denmark, in Spain, Marbella. So there's an awesome deal that's going on here that you truly don't want to miss. You don't want to miss it. You want to incorporate into your life what we do here. And there's a manuscript that can tell you what we do here. You don't have to try to figure it out on your own. You can follow the directions. And I say directions because I forget what page it's on in the big book, 54 something. It says further on, clear-cut directions are given as to how we recover. So I'm a guy that I believe the word suggestion was thrown in there to get you off track, to give you a choice. Real alcoholic, real addict has no choice. They've lost power, choice, and control. They will never, ever again be able to control their drinking and their using, and on a certain level, certain parts of their life. They will need a power greater than themselves to begin to speak to them on a daily basis, give direction and instruction as to what it is that you need to do. Now, what you do with that is up to you. But I'm still here because it's proven to be true for me. In some of the most dire dilemmas in my life in recovery, I needed power and direction to breathe, just to breathe. Barry talked about me taking that trip to New York. That was my first amends trip. Back in the day, we used to do amends trips, meaning if you had amends in certain parts of the country that you weren't in, you scheduled a trip back to clear up and do those amends, because step 9 for me is the ultimate surrender, the completion of step 9. And I said to breathe, Terry, because I had amends to dope dealers, 2 different sets that had contracts on my life. And I had to go back in the beginning when I started in that piece of work, that first piece of work, and what was mapped out to me, what the 12 steps entailed. When he got to step 9, I said, hold it. I got stuff, man. I can't go back and see those people, man. They're going to kill me. Or they're going to lock me up. I'm not going to do that. And Alton simply said to me, don't worry about step 9 now. We're only in step 1. We'll look at it again by the time you get to step 9. By the time I got to step 9 in my first piece of work, I was willing to make every single amends. Nobody hurt me. Nobody, well, I'm sitting here with you, so definitely they didn't kill me. Nobody locked me up. A couple of stores threatened to. They just told me, just whatever you're doing, keep doing what you're doing and don't bring your ass back in here. That was over 30 years ago. There's truly a message and there's truly a path here that's revolutionary in you changing your life, in you changing your life. Not your sponsor, not your meeting, not your priest, not your doctor, not your minister, you. You get the power to recreate your life. That's the promise that was handed down from the very beginning. Title page says how thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And on the end of that, you can put and drug addiction. I'm a recovered addict today. I am so grateful for that. So Theory asked me to talk about be quick to see where religious people are right. How'd you know, man? Oh, you might have heard me. You've heard me speak a couple times, so you might have heard a little bit of my story. Religious people. I grew up in religion the first 10 years of my life. First 10 years of my life, I was made to, from when I could crawl, attend church. My mother gave me to my godmother, who was pastor of the church that I grew up in. My mother was an evangelist, and my grandmother was senior mother in the church, mother matriarch in the church. Started the Sunday school with me and my first cousins, Tiny and Ben. So I was introduced to religion very young in my life. Before they were born, it's about a year or so difference in age between the three of us, with me being the oldest. My mother and my godmother would just let me crawl all around the church and do whatever I wanted to do. And I grew up in religion. Didn't know, didn't know what was happening. Didn't have a clue. As I grew up in that church, and I became a alkalite around the age of 6, was robed and attended the altar and attended my godmother and sat on the altar, cleaned the altar. Didn't know. Didn't know what was in store for me. Didn't know that from the very beginning it was a setup. Somebody in this meeting this afternoon, you're just like me. You have an idea of what we're talking about. You've been introduced to what we're talking about very long ago. Some of you, exactly like me, from the very beginning of your physical existence, somebody showed you God, and somebody introduced religious tenets into your life. And the main deal, spirituality. But at that point in my life, I didn't know what was going on. I know today that they had a connection and knew they needed to have a connection with the power greater than themselves in order for them to live and breathe and being. So, being thankful for that connection, they worshiped God. They thanked Him in all kinds of ways for just breathing on a daily basis. And what they did was, in their infinite wisdom, which they didn't know, they passed on seeds to me that they knew. They planted seeds in me that they knew somewhere down the line I would need God. I'm quite clear on that. It's another piece I'm clear on, that my mother did not name me Michael by accident. She named me Michael on purpose. I can ask her in spirit world. She's not here physically. I can ask her, but I really don't need to ask her, because some things you become confirmed in. You know, you get a knowingness about certain things. God begins to develop you spiritually and mentally. So I know it was not by accident that I was named Michael. Was not by accident that them early years of my life I was introduced to religion, and on a certain level spirituality, which I really wasn't in touch with that, because I grew up in an evangelistic church where there's shouting and talking in tongues and prophecy and all kinds of stuff, healings and baptism, and I didn't know what was going on. Today I do. Today I do. I've come 365 degrees with that. Religion is a part of my life today. Religion is just another connection to a power that's greater than yourself, that in that religion, because it's man-made, and you know what man does when he gets his hands on stuff, man, he does all kind of stuff in it to suit him. Well, thank God, even in that happening, God can show up and do his work and perform his miracles. But in that deal, I was able to see, not until I got to you guys. I lived in that for about 10 years. Church every Sunday, all day Sunday, sat on the altar, sang in the choir, in Sunday school, taught Sunday school, was a beacon in that church, was groomed and fashioned actually to be the pastor of that church at that very young age. But I had no desire for that. Bill's story talks about my attention was caught. My attention was not caught in that religious way of living life, that spiritual way of living life, to the depths that we in the rooms of Cocaine Anonymous must live it. Pushing off into step 10, it tells us the spiritual life is not a theory. I must live it. Meaning my dependence and my reliance must be on a power greater than myself. I am so thankful for those 3 women. I've had to write a lot of inventory on those 3 women in that little church because of my upbringing and the notions that came and the ideas that came to sway me from those principles and those seeds that them ladies seeded, grounded me with very young in my life. A lot of inventory. They raised me in the way that they did, hoping that I would get what it was that I needed in order to live. And there were times I thought they were the meanest people in the world. But today I know they were the most loving people in the world. They wanted life for me. They wanted breath for me. They wanted me to know where I could go when life set in. That God is. So it was too late by the time I got to the age of 10, even with the decision I made. By the time I got to the age of 10, they had did their job. I spoke about it last night in the meeting. We have assignments. God gives us assignments. He gives us a reason why we're still alive. He shows us who it is we are to be. And as a result of that, we get to know what it is we must do. My life here is somewhat on a plane of more clarity than it's ever been in my life. There were periods in my using where I had crystal clear clarity. Go hit a lick, find a dope man, get the dope, get high. Crystal clarity. That needs to happen here for somebody. And for somebody on this meeting this afternoon, you're not clear. You're not a seeker. You've been around for a while and your life is twisted and mangled and you're in turmoil, and we've given you all the tools that you need. We've given you the avenues that you need to travel in order to bring peace to your spirit and to your soul. I don't care what's going on. I've just come through 2 horrific years, bedridden, 5 surgeries. Might have to have another one because of this thumb that I fractured when I fell in London. Two, God sat me up, straightened me up, and put me back on the path with a new story and a new song in my mouth. Because I know I have an assignment today. So as we move through the process of recovery, they give us directions. Directions like turn your life and your will over to the power of God, a God of your own understanding. Face to be rid of what's blocking you from that power. Do a fact-finding, fact-facing inventory of your life, not your wife, not your husband, not your employer, not your CA group, your life. Everything begins and ends with me, not your sponsor. So many people want to find fault with their sponsor, and the fault is not with their sponsor, the fault is with them. Stop judging people. If you get the blessing to make it through 1 through 9, step 10 says, my next deal is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. People are doing exactly what they need to do in the precise moment that they're doing it. My deal needs to be, how can I be of help to you? How can I be of service to you as you travel through your wilderness? What can I do? We do a fact-finding, fact-facing inventory of our lives. We go to God and we ask God to take a look at this, man. I'm sharing me with you, every single piece of me with you. I'm transparent with you. I need to draw closer to you because I begin to see that without you, I am nothing. I can do nothing. I will prevail over nothing. I pull out character defects, pull out aspects of character, pull out shortcomings, and I go to God and say, God, here, you take them. You work with them for me. Change me. Change me. Renew me. Give me the power to recreate me. And he does exactly that. Then you leave it alone. You don't keep giving it to him and taking it back. You leave it alone. Let him do the work. If I could have changed me, I would have changed me at 19 when I went to my first treatment program, which was Synanon in Santa Monica, California, back in 1968, 69, 70. It's been so long, I've forgotten. Because I had an inkling, something's wrong with you. I didn't know back then I had lost power, choice, and control, actually a few years before I went into Synanon. Synanon only opened up to me that there was a whole new, vibrant, alive world outside of Harlem, New York. That the world wasn't about blackness like I thought it was, or about religions like I thought it was. At that time, the Black Panthers and Muslims, the black Muslims, and all types of religions were at bay, recruiting people. Well, I got into the religion of Heron. It became my religion because I cut everything else loose. I used to look down on that. I used to have an eschewing eye towards Heron and my relationship with it. Today, I thank God for it. I mean, look what it's done as a result of that and my experience in my life. Living through that experience, look where you've come from, Mike. But the key piece for me today is look where you've come from and look who's brought you through. Wasn't you. You should have been dead a few times. Spirit said, no, if you were supposed to be dead, you'd be dead. No, you weren't supposed to die. You were supposed to be alive in whatever given situation you were in. Live life to cultivate a story that fortunately, and not because of me, has touched people all over the world. It amazes me what God has done with my life. Amazes me. We get to that step, 8, 9, and we go out into the world and we clean up the messes that we've made. And as we move into that and gravitate into that, our textbook gives us some clear-cut direction. Clear-cut directions on page 87. It says, if we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. Directions. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There's a beautiful prayer in the 11th step where this writing is in step 11, the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, that will give you a way to live life. It will show you how to be on a daily basis. It says there are many helpful books also. I got a whole library over here with books. Whole library. Many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. But here's the piece. It says be quick. Be quick. Directions to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. There's a whole nother realm of development in religion for us. But I first must get a foundation in recovery. I didn't become privy to that reading and that information and how it was relayed to me. I had been in recovery some 10, 12, maybe even 15 years. I was basically involved in the process of recovery, doing work, helping others, sponsoring, starting meetings. By then I had begun doing some speaking at conventions. And then I was in Austin, Texas, 2006. So this is 25, yeah, about 20 years ago. And I had a buddy that I played racquetball with who was a minister and a pastor of a church in Austin, Texas. And I've told you about my indoctrination into religion very young in my life. God had become a part of my life. And what those three women seeded me with, that was planted in soil just waiting to sprout flowers. So I'm playing racquetball. I can't even remember his name now. And he invited me to his church one Sunday. And he did a couple of times. And I finally made a decision to go to his church one Sunday morning. And he starts bringing the word. And tears just start flowing. And inside of me, a voice was saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. And the tears are streaming. And then another voice said, but you're at home. You don't need to go home. You're already at home. That was a sign for me to go back to church. I got back to LA. It was a church on Vermont Avenue that had the name of a familiar church that I grew up with in New York. And I said, I'm going to go to that church one Sunday. And I actually did. And when I walked in, I looked around and I said, Universal Tabernacle. I said, okay. I said, Bishop O'Neill had a church named that when I was growing up. It was like a sister church to my church in New York that I grew up with. But when I walked in, I didn't know anybody. And as I'm sitting there, they bring the message, and then they ask, is there any visitors here? Anybody here for the very first time? This is for somebody. I don't know who in this meeting this is for, but it's for somebody. And I stood up and I said my name, and I used my church home as my church home in New York, Richardson Memorial Church of Divine Science. And a gentleman was sitting on the altar with the pastor, and he got up and he began to spin around in circles. And when he stopped, he looked at Reverend Miller and he said to her, I told you there was something special about that young man when he walked through the door. And he looked at me from afar and he said, I know you. He said, I know you. He said, I lived in Chicago and I would come to New York, and I was a clothes designer at that time. And I would make clothes for your godmother, Reverend Murphy. And she would have me make suits for you. He said, I know you. He said, welcome home. And by that time, the tears are streaming. And he's having a fit up on the altar. I told you I believe in shouting and speaking in tongues and prophecy. I've been home ever since. What I found out over the years is that exactly what we bring to you in Cocaine Anonymous, the majority of those tenants in a sure enough grounded church, there's no difference. There's no difference. But being who we are, real alcoholics, real addicts, I must first get a foundation under me, a grounding with this disease, physical, mental, and spiritual, and a knowingness that says, I have to have help. I can't fight it. I tried to fight it for 20 something years. That first treatment center, Synanon, was not my last. In 1987, I went into my last treatment program, American Hospital in Pomona, California. I didn't know it was my last. I went in because they told me that they were putting me on a drug diversion program where I would have to test every week. But I wouldn't know when I needed to go to test and pee for them. And then a voice said, well, you know you're not going to not get loaded for a year. You're going to penitentiary this time. And trying to avert that process, I run into treatment. I know that voice was the voice of a loving God that began to map out the rest of the plan that he had in place for me. American Hospital opened me up to a whole new idea about my drug addiction and my life. I had never heard of 12-step fellowships. I had never heard of Cocaine Anonymous. I had never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had never heard of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and a process of recovery being in that book. I didn't know it was a way out. I didn't know that there was a way that I could not ever shoot dope again and want to not shoot dope. I had a love affair with heroin. The greatest love affair I've ever had in my life. And I've been married twice, and I've been in numerous relationships. But with heroin, there was no holds barred. All bets were off. That's what I was in love with. Lived that way for 20 plus years. Throughout my journey, as a result of the process in the book, I've learned my truth, and I've seen my truth without actually having to go back out and live it. God has freed me. He's also opened up numerous doors for me to have a personal relationship with him. That's what religion is about. Having a personal relationship with God. You just call it something different. You possibly live it in a different way. You have different tenets, but on a basic level, it's no different than what we do here. I'm about to be installed as pastor of my church in September. That installing is about having a grounding here in Cocaine Anonymous and the work that I've done over the years in being a servant, in being a messenger, in being anointed, having an assignment. So religion has really opened my life up on another level. It's another whole community that I get to work with and love with and be of service with. I step out on the tenets that's given to us in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I use them to enlarge my spiritual life. and I do them, and I let the process and the growing be what God wants it to be without expectations. Did I ask for this? No. Did I know it would be about this? No. Did I think my life would take off in the areas and the branches that it's acquired the way it has in these 38 years? No. Back in 1987, when I went into that treatment program and I heard a message as a result of H&I coming in and the panels that came in, and we go out to meetings, I heard a message that simply said, you don't ever have to get high again. Coupled with the fact of you don't ever have to live your life the way you've been living it since God knows when again. Being an explorer. I explored with drugs. I started using drugs with airplane glue in a paper bag. Up the ladder like so many of you. We have so much in common. That's the camaraderie here. What do we have in common? Physically, mentally, and spiritually, are we alike? That's the club in the club. Because everybody that comes to see us in Cocaine Anonymous is not in the club in the club. They can find a home in CA, but they don't have to do what I do. The steps and my relationship with God is pertinent to my life and my breathing and my living and my evolution. I am so grateful today. I am so grateful for the very simple thing. It's very simple today. Somebody will call me and ask me to speak. Would you speak at our meeting? I look in my refrigerator and I got food to eat. Basically, whatever I want. And if I don't, I can go get it. Wasn't like that before. I got clothes to wear that some of them I need to go through my wardrobe and give them away to Goodwill or Salvation Army. I got so much. The simplicity of my life today. I woke up this morning, just waking up. So I want to say God bless you this afternoon. God keep you. There's a club in the club here. There's a club in the club. Book tells us there's three types of people that hang out with us: the moderate, the hard, and the real addict, real alcoholic. If you're in that class, you got some work to do. But not only do you have some work to do, you need to put yourself in a place where the work begins to work you. And you feel the need and the thirst and the hunger to see what religious people are about. Find some other people that do what we do. They're called like-minded people. They believe in spirit. They believe in spirit world. They believe in living a life seeped in spirituality. I align God with everything that I do today, every single thing. Nothing is by accident, and I live in the moment. So as I'm inspired and through intuition, I do. Then I trust God in my doing. He's done such a great job up until now. Why wouldn't I? Terry, thank you so much for asking me out. Good to see you. I don't know, man. You up in Yonkers. I don't know if you can make it down to the city. I'd like to see you face to face so I can give you a hug. Or I might even come up to Yonkers, man. Yonkers used to be my jitterbugging days. A lot of y'all don't know what jitterbugging is. Jitterbugging is when we were in social clubs. And I used to be in a gang up in Yonkers called the Top Hats. That's back in the day. And we had gang jackets and we had caps, and on the jackets we had our gang name. Mine is Professor. It's my email, some of y'all that know. And then on the back we had our gang name, and we'd have territories. That's what comes to mind when I think of Yonkers. I've lost 2 stepbrothers in Yonkers from this disease. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Hopefully something was said that encourages you and bring you to a point to say, yeah, I'm like him. I've done some of the things that he's done. I've weathered some of the storms that he's weathered. If you haven't tried some of the things that I've done in the process of recovery or in your life, give me a call. I'll put my number in the chat and my email. I'm always available to speak. I'm always available to sponsor, because most of the people that ask me to sponsor them, they never complete the assignment. They fall out in step 1 or step 4 or step 9. Because this ain't for poopies, this is for mad dogs. I'm talking about the club in the club. You can hang out in the fellowship, the spirit of the fellowship, but what about the fellowship of the spirit? Like-minded spirits connecting. And you get a whole new family that you never knew could exist and be for you. That's enough out of me. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.